another one of our staff members here at CINEKYD, the gentleman to my left. Before we talk to him, though, let's dig back into our files. Here's a very special student-made film called The Blip. Those of you with sharp eyes may notice a similarity between the little performer in that film and the gentleman here, Mr. Dan Oceanreither, graduate assistant at CINEKYD Enterprises, who'll be sharing the chores tonight on CINEKYD Theater. And welcome to this week's edition of CINEKYD Theater. I'm Bob Clark, Executive Director for CINEKYD Enterprises Incorporated. And this is one of our staff members, Dan Oceanreither, who is in charge of our film department. Dan, you started with the Upper Moreland filmmaking program when you were how old?
I was 11 years old.
The film that we saw before our opening credit, was that the first movie that you appeared in?
Yes, that was the very first movie I ever made.
Mm-hmm. So you were already a performer at 11?
Yes, if you can call it that.
Uh-huh. A little later in tonight's broadcast, interestingly enough, we have yet another production which features Mr. Oceanreither, made about a year ago, during his last year here as a student, before he assumed the chores of coordinating our film department. Would you tell our viewers what it is that boys and girls who are involved within your area do here at CINEKYD?
Well, the children edit the films. They do the actual cutting and soundtracking of the films, and they also come in and manage the movie nights.
We're going to proceed now, not to film, but to videotape And as some of you have indicated in your cards and phone calls, to what might be the most interesting part of CINEKYD Theater, the look behind the scenes, the area where people like Dan and Jeff Worthington, who we met last week, supervise. Here we'll see what it's like in a typical workshop session here at CINEKYD as we produce the 7 keys. Let's watch.
Right there. I just wrong. Professor Moriarty. Professor Moriarty. I thought he was good to from down there. That was so strong to me. That Professor Moriarty. But many people believe that Professor Moriarty is dead. No, why it's got to be Moriarty. That was the belief Moriarty was dead. From where? Just walk back and forth. Stand and walk forward. Yeah, back there you go. That's it, Mama. Alright, camera people. Lighting is on. This is going to be a cake rehearsal. I'm going to go to the corner of the chair. Cake rehearsal. Up this side. After this, things that goes right upstairs.
Here and there and elsewhere.
What's going on downstairs?
Celebrity Circle. That's another part of the show.
Very good. Short, sweet, to the point. Where are we going?
Bertha, 5, 4, 3, 2. Hi, my name's Dr. Bertha. I just graduated from University of Leia. Well, I like it.
Oh, good evening. Did you see a short man walk by? He had a big sack over his back and he was dressed in black. He's carrying a poodle on a leash. He stole my TV set. I was looking for him because I'm on a mystery. And I was trying to find him so that I could get back the TV set. Get back the TV set. Well, if you can't find him, that's okay. Well, thank you anyway. Bye.
She had a lot of presents.
Places, Tractorberg. We started in the beginning, so the technical. I could have put your cribs. Technical? I know. I heard you.
Are we set for a rehearsal?
Yeah. Everybody quiet, please. Cameras listening and watching.
Okay, quiet.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Conrad, you're wearing a hole in the rug. What did you say? Grandmother, is it right for a child to give advice to an adult? It depends. See, I think I have some information that might help Mr. Holmes with his case. And he's been coming in so early. And I was wondering if you could give me information. I? Yes, you see, my friend saw it. He has this information that I think would help Mr. Holmes. Well, let me get you. It's waiting outside. All right.
Hello, Mrs. Hudson.
How do you do, sir?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine. Well, what information do you want?
Well, Mrs.
weeks past, you have seen Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes. You have met them. And right now, we are at the boarding house with Mrs. Hudson, who's talking to her grandson about the shooting that has taken place.
Conrad, you're wearing a hole in the carpet. Do sit.
Grandmother, is it right for a child to give advice to an adult?
It depends.
You see, I have some information that I think would help Mr. Holmes in his case. But, you know, he's been coming in so late and leaving so early in the morning, and I haven't had a chance to tell him. But I was wondering if you could give him the information.
I?
Yes. You see, my friend Socrates, he has the information that I think would help Mr. Holmes.
Well,
Let me go get him. He's waiting outside.
all right.
Hello, 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 Mrs.
How do you
Hudson.
do, Socrates?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Do sit.
Thank you.
Now, what is this information you have?
Well, Mrs. Hudson, I have gathered certain information from my numerous sources, so to speak, that might know that I'm sure would be of great help to Mr. Holmes in his search.
Do be more specific.
You are familiar with 7 keys.
Yes, of course.
Well, Mrs. Hudson, I have reason to believe that it's not just Mr. Holmes who's involved in this matter, as it were. I also believe that there are more than one person, there's more than one person, that is, who is searching for the keys. I also strongly believe that Professor Moriarty,
Many others believe Professor Moriarty is dead.
that Professor Moriarty has actually been buying these keys.
What proof do you have?
Well, Mrs. Hudson, I have some friends who have actually been selling these keys to Professor Moriarty. Can I bring them in?
Yes, of course.
This is Miss Darcy and Master Jason.
How do you do?
They're from the family home.
If Sister tells me that you'll never let her know that we were here, I promise I won't tell her. Please, do sit. Please, tell me. Well, it all happened when, a couple months ago, Sister Armstrong sent us to...
Plot thickens, and it's beginning to become obvious that Sister Thelma and Professor Moriarty are soon to be discovered. But now we return to the CINEKYD Film Library, and as I promised at the beginning of tonight's broadcast, a motion picture that features Dan and a number of our players. A couple weeks ago, we aired Invasion, a spectacular production which was made in 1980 during the winter recess. A year before that, we made a color motion picture film called The Hole in the Wall. Do you recall how many days it took to shoot that one?
I believe it only took 2 days, 2 to 3 days.
Yes. The same amount of time, but several weeks in post-production. Here now, from the CINEKYD players, The Hole in the Wall.
It all began here, a little country boarding house not far from State University. 80 years before, when the place had been built, there was talk about haunted ground, but that was long ago. Mary Gruber was doing graduate work at the university. just for one semester. She settled into the boarding house with some of her artist friends. Her niece and nephew would come along to help her get settled. They all went down to the basement for some tools and to have a poke around the old place. Basements and attics have a certain fascination. They're filled with junk and debris, but to the eyes of an artist or a child, sometimes all sorts of treasures. Like the little handmade box Mary uncovered, intricately crafted and painted, not far from the toy boy doll some child had grown tired of and left in the dark cellar. And Mary returned the box with the lid open. In the basement with the lid open. No one was there when the hole in the wall first appeared. Down in the cellar, close to the junk, nearby the old treasures and the toy boy doll. His name was Jed Baines. He was sort of the handyman at the boarding house. He kept things in repair in exchange for his room and board. Somebody had noticed the hole, and Jed had gotten around to having a look himself. He just started to resolve the problem. That's when the lamp began moving, all by itself. For Jed Baines, that's when the lights went out. Forever. The police began an investigation of the murder, and two young detectives, Asher and Corson, were put in charge of the case. The murder was gruesome, but there were virtually no clues. And back at the boarding house, the other residents took precautions. Mrs. Gleason, a widow with 3 children, laid down the law. No more roaming after school. Everyone was to come directly home, and above all, no playing down in the basement. The cellar had always been a fascinating place, and in spite of the horrors of only a few days before, the children found it difficult to understand why their play had been regulated. Their mother was adamant. Another boarder, Jeremy Lewis, a graduate student in the School of Journalism. For him, the events took the form of chapters in a book. As time passed, the danger seemed to fade for Mary and her artist friends. They were caught up in the excitement of their work. Judy Neal, a talented undergraduate who planned a career as a commercial artist. And Donna Brown, who was working part-time at a city advertising agency. In short order, things had gotten back into a quiet but pleasant routine. The girls directed their energies to mounting and showing of their recent efforts. It was shortly after lunch on a Wednesday. Mary and Donna were just going to run down to the art supply store to purchase a few little items. They had just left when the phone rang. Judy listened carefully. The voice was unfamiliar. She was to meet a prospective client. That information was contained in the note left behind for her friends. Like Donna and Mary, Judy only expected to be gone a few short minutes. Nothing is more curious than a cat, they say, unless it's a group of kids. And in spite of all the threats, some of the older children ventured into the basement. They were looking for clues. Exploration was cut short by Jeremy Lewis, who sent them directly and safely back to their parents. Jeremy wasn't outside the park where Judy had gone. It was broad daylight, but Judy Neal felt a little uncomfortable. She had yet to meet her client, but she felt... Later, Judy's disappearance was reported, and the police moved into action. The park was a big area, and local residents volunteered to assist with the search. Before the countryside was scoured for clues, Lewis took a few minutes to speak with the members of the rescue party. The police, who refused to connect Judy's disappearance with the handyman's murder. It was still just a missing